People of Earth, we have come to upgrade your cosmic consciousness. DNA activation ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome to Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. I'm Lou Quinto.
And I'm Craig Anderson.
What's up, Greg?
You know, I just have a hankering for some viewer mail, Lou.
No. Is it? Well, I was looking at the schedule. We haven't done viewer mail in a while.
We have not. And see, that's why I have a hankering for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
well, I went through the mailbag and pulled out some questions that will challenge us and make us hopefully be smart when we're answering these poor viewers.
I thought you were just going to pull out the ones full of puffery and saying how awesome we were.
Yeah, no. I dug deep. I wanted to find those that really challenged us.
All right. Well, let's pause. I'm going to get some coffee.
What's that?
I'm going to pause and get some coffee if I have to actually think about
it. Okay. Yeah. No, you got the aspirin somewhere behind you there. So just pop 2 aspirin and we'll be ready to go.
Fair enough.
So it's time for viewer mail. And our first letter comes from, or I shouldn't say letter because it was an email, comes from Cindy in San Antonio. And Cindy says, "Hi guys, our company has opened our offices back up, but remote work is still a personal option. I lead a team. How do I coordinate everyone's schedule to maximize in-person collaboration? I'll hang up and listen."
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, the first question I might ask is, tell me more about what you've been doing the last 2 years to coordinate everyone's schedule.
Good point.
And that is probably what you're going to continue to need to do, depending on where your policies are that you've created around work from home. And I'm just looking at this, I can't tell from this, the company's opened up, but remote work's still a personal option. So as long as those are the rules of the road, you're probably going to have to work to schedule the meetings the way you've been doing that the last couple of years. And it's going to be a little tricky, right? Because, you're going to want to have everybody in the conference room that's there physically. And then you want to have other people on Zoom.
She does say in-person collaboration.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I'm thinking, okay, some people are going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Some are going to do Tuesdays and Thursday. And poor Cindy here from San Antonio wants to maximize everyone's schedule when she probably knows that everyone won't be in the office at the same time.
Which is good. But again, I guess my question is, if it's a personal option, that tells me the employee is deciding if they're coming into the office or not. And within your company's guidelines, do you have the ability to mandate them to be in on a given day? If you do, I would say those days, and what I've heard from clients, what they're working on is when they do have people in the office, they try and coordinate it so they're there on those days. And those become project days and interaction days. And the days where you don't require it are the days when you're doing your focus work and your writing work or whatever it is. So I think that the first question really is, can you even do that under your company's policy, the way it's been written? And I actually had a client I talked to the other day who was working to try and memorialize some policies around remote work, because right now it's all just a little too, it's this, it's that, it's not formalized. So I would say, one, if you have a formalized policy that lets them make the choice.
I got to ask a question.
What?
They want to memorialize some policies around. What's that mean? What's that mean?
They don't have policies. They just have, some people do it, some people don't. Some people have gotten kind of a hand wave exception to do it. Others haven't. So fundamentally, it becomes a fairness question. You're either allowed to work from home or you're not, or it's classified by job type or something like that. At any rate, Cindy, assuming you can do it within your guidelines, I would work on trying to have 1 or 2 days a week where you ask everybody to be there and pick those days and do the best you can with it. You could be really popular, make those days Mondays and Fridays. That will make you really. Don't we have a question later about the Great Resignation? If you would like to trigger that,
he's saying that with tongue in cheek. Don't make it Mondays and Fridays.
Yeah, if you really want to see how many people can resign, do it on Monday and Friday. But that's what I would recommend. If you can do it within your policies, do it get 1 or 2 days a week where everyone's there and see what you can do.
Yeah. I look back at some of our podcasts, and I believe that when we were on the verge of, ooh, we've got this COVID thing all taken care of, companies are going to start opening up. I think you and I, one of the recommendations we made is that companies need to get their act together very quickly so that when they get into the situation and they are opening the offices, they do have those policies and procedures in place. But I'm finding with many of my clients, they're not in place.
Right.
In fact, just last week, I was with one of my major clients, and officially they opened their offices up on Monday. And this is a very large headquarters building. And when I walked in and was greeted by the receptionist, I said, so you still remote work? And she said, oh, no. She said, as of Monday, we were allowed to come in. And so I looked around, I said, so where is everyone? She said, no one wants to come in. They're all getting their work done from home. So it's
well,
like,
to be fair to us, Lou, and them, I mean, I think when we were doing, because those podcasts have all come back around in the last couple of weeks, right? Because it was March 2020 and I'm watching them. To be fair, we thought it was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We didn't know it was 3 to 6 months to 2 years before they'd actually have to open the doors. And I would, if you think back to like our interview with Donna and some others, they had to shift so much further than they thought towards this long-term remote work. I think everyone was so busy trying to make that work for so long. It's only been a few months, right? And now they just never had a chance to come up with the policy, or they pulled the trigger. Like, remember we talked about Chase and Goldman Sachs, you get back in here. And I was like, well,
you can go to a restaurant and eat. Yeah.
So I think there's just been that stop and start. And I think it's been confusing. And now the rubber's really hitting the road with the vaccine and the lifting of a lot of the mandate, a lifting of the CDC guidelines and things. So now people are, you always had that safe harbor with the CDC to say, well, if they say that, we're not going to open. Well, now you don't really have that anymore. So now people are having to deal with it. And I think it's a struggle.
Well, in fact, I even read an article this morning. I forget what journal I read it from, but they said that there are some companies that hired people during the last 2 years and told them that remote was always going to be an option. And now they're saying, yeah, no, we want you in the office. And these folks aren't even in the city where the office that they're working out of or their teams are located are. And so now people are having to decide, do I pick up my family and move to keep this job, or do I commute back and forth for a week at a time and rent an apartment? So, companies, and I'm not saying all companies out there, but there may be some companies out there that promised remote work would always be out there. And now you've got some that are pulling the rug out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got all these people, there was an article I read about that too, but it was longer ago. They sold their house, they moved to Florida. And now their job's in the Midwest somewhere. And
it's find that job in Florida. And we're taping this on the 14th of March. It'll be out a week later. But I mean, this is the anniversary, 2-year anniversary of COVID. This is, when the proverbial caca hit the fan 2 years ago.
Happy anniversary, everybody.
Oh, always the bright side. Well, let me just get back with Cindy one more time here. And Cindy, I'll agree with Craig on this one. You've got a blank slate right now. And I would recommend that you take a look at what days you want to have your team meeting on, and make sure that everybody knows that, you can do your 2 days or 3 days remote, but let's put it on our calendar that this is the one day we get to the office. And don't make it just a 1-hour meeting, because I would hate to, live in north of Chicago and have to pack my bags and get in my car and drive all the way to downtown Chicago inside the loop, and then go for an hour meeting. So if you're going to schedule other activities or encourage other groups within the team to schedule their meetings also at that time, so it becomes a full day of meetings, and as you put it, Cindy, in your email, in-person collaboration. So set it aside and make time for it.
All right. Question number 2. Lou and Craig, speaking of Great Resignation, our company has been hit hard by the Great Resignation. My normal team has lost 10 of 25 members. I am spending more time onboarding new team members, which is taking away from productivity time. Any suggestions on how I can turn this around and get back to being productive? From Tad in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, Thad, in Jackson, Mississippi, just to bring all of our listeners up to date in case they are unfamiliar with the Great Resignation, but in 2021, 47 million people up and left the job that they were in and just said, I'm done, I'm moving on. And so I think according to statistics, that's about 33% of non-farm activity, which is the way the Department of Labor categorizes everything. And I know that in January, 3.8 million people quit or resigned from their job. So it didn't stop in 2021. It's continuing in 2022. And so I I feel your pain. There.
Deep cut.
What's that?
Deep cut.
Deep cut. Yes, I'll feel your pain. And this is something, if you've lost 10 out of 25 members of your team, you're close to 50%. That's Purdue math coming into here. Okay. But so, yeah, you're going to have more onboarding. There's no question about it. And so what I would do is I would take and schedule onboarding time and use it to maximum efficiency. So if there are things that are part of onboarding that HR requires, make sure with those individuals that it is set aside, you create that appointment for those 10 new people to sit through, whether it be HR, health, insurance policy, procedures, time off, vacation, whatever it is. And the other thing too, that is, don't try to do it all yourself. Recruit people in the onboarding process who are really experts. I'm assuming, Thad, that you're not in HR. So my question or comment to you would be, don't try to do the HR onboarding. Go ahead, and particularly if the company realizes that this is having a significant impact, I would turn it back to HR and say, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about this onboarding process from the HR perspective. Now, there's also onboarding from other perspectives, like getting up to date with team members, understanding how the process is, how the team works. If you're in an IT department, what's the process for writing a program, from the business analyst to the coders to the testers, all the way to rolling out the finished product. And again, Thad, don't put it all on yourself. Use experts that are good and maybe even better than you at explaining and mentoring and having them, assign on-the-job training for these folks to get up very quickly. Because if you are trying to do everything yourself, your productivity is going to go down significantly. So what I would do is learn how to delegate and write down. I'll apply some good critical thinking here, Thad, is write down all of the parts of the onboarding and then try to come up with who is the best person to assist you in doing this onboarding, so that you're doing the coordination, you're doing the follow-up, but they're doing the actual onboarding themselves. So that's my suggestion, Thad, to keep that productivity level at a high level when you've got almost 50% of your people are new. They're learning the ropes. That's tough. I feel for you.
So, Tad, here's what I would do first. Find the nearest mirror and go look at it. And ask that person a question: what am I doing that 10 out of 25 of my people have resigned? If we look into the research on the Great Resignation and all the articles and all the things we read about, people are participating in the Great Resignation to get more money, to get away from bad bosses, to get out of toxic cultures, because go back to our last question, because they're being told they have to come back into the office when they don't want to. I get the productivity thing. 100%. By the way, each one of those turnovers is costing you about 30% of their salary to replace. So it's not just productivity, it's time. What is going on? And, we don't know how big your company is. Maybe you don't have HR, maybe you own the company, but what's going on that you have that many people leaving you? Because that's way above the average of what we're seeing in the Great Resignation. So the tough love answer here is, what are you doing? Why are your people leaving at this level? And what is your contribution to those things that's driving it? And it's easy enough to kind of hand wave and say, oh, well, they're just bad employees or whatever. but you don't have that kind of turnover unless there's something else going on. Is there too much work? Is the workload too heavy? You need to really ask yourself why this is going on, because my guess is you can onboard all these folks, but the same thing's going to happen if you're not dealing with some of the core issues of why you have the turnover you did. So I feel for you, and I get the productivity piece, because that would be a time suck to onboard that many people, but I don't think you want to do it again. So have that tough conversation with yourself and figure out what's going on that you're running into these kind of problems. So that's the tough love answer for you today.
Wow, you did a root cause analysis on that one.
Well, you're the one who tells me I need to do critical thinking. So
yeah, you looked at that a little bit different than I did, and then maybe even Thad did, in really understanding what the problem really is. The problem is he has to bring people up to date, but you don't need to do that if you do figure out why so many people have left. Wow. Yeah.
We just need that thing from the Saturday morning cartoons. The more you know.
I never watched TV. So, okay.
All right.
All right. The next one. Is it my turn? Am I reading this one?
Yes. No. Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. Okay, good. Well, that's good, because it's kind of addressed to me. And this is from Stan in East Hanover, New Jersey, not too far from my stomping grounds where I grew up, in North Plainfield, New Jersey. And he says, sorry, Lou, I have a question about meetings. So apparently, Craig, you're doing a good job of promoting the image there that I hate meetings. So he's coming in with, let me apologize in advance. But what Stan writes is that I find that many people are scheduling meetings that are showing up back to back on my calendar, and I don't have any time to get from one meeting room to another when I'm in the office without being late for the next meeting. Any hints? Go for it, Craig.
I wonder if he works for that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just kidding, Thad. Wow. Well, there was a time I worked for a company, and there was a guy who was one of the senior VPs, and his assistant had standing instructions that he had to have a 15-minute buffer between meetings, or she was not to accept the meeting. That's pretty extreme, but it was also pretty effective, because generally speaking, he was pretty ready for the meetings that he went to. Mm-hmm. And we're finding this. I can't remember, we talked about this before, Lou, the people who are going back to the office now, and they realized that it's not, they have to go halfway across the building for a meeting. So they were in one from 10 to 11, next started at 11, and they're all messed up.
Instead of going from one Zoom call to another Zoom call. And sit there.
So maybe just go back to remote work, Stan. But the other thing is, take a hard look at some of these meetings. Why are you getting invited? Do you need to be there? Can you send a proxy? Can you just, these are all, I have none of these answers. These are all just the ones I've stolen from Lou over the course of this podcast, is just go in and find, have someone, can you just get the notes? Can someone just send you the notes? What value do you bring to that meeting? And not to say you don't bring value, but do you have to be there? And is it really worth your time to be there? Start being a little more discriminating about the meetings, or push back to the person and just say, look, do we have to have this meeting, or can we just get this taken care of right now? We have a tendency to schedule lots and lots of meetings, and we don't always, and we just kind of indiscriminately invite tons of people to them. Right. So push back a bit on some of the meetings would be my first recommendation.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, in a lot of larger organizations, people can go onto your calendar and they can look at your calendar to see if you're available. And in there, you have the ability to put space time in between meetings. Put those blocks in there, so that people know, if they see, oh, good, he's wrapping up a meeting at 1:00, he can be here at 2:00, or 1:59, he can be here at 2:00. No. Put that at the end of each meeting. There's a 10-minute block. You can do that on most programs that companies use to be able to schedule meetings. The other thing too, and I like what Craig said, Stan, and that is, for every meeting you're invited to, don't assume just because you got an email with an agenda, if there was an agenda attached to it, inviting you to that meeting. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone call or call them, and or shoot them another email, whatever way of communicating you want, and just say, why am I being invited to this meeting? Very simple. What data can I provide? And you may find that the answer is just, well, we thought you'd want to be in the loop. Well, that's wonderful. If you get a response that says, we thought you would just want to be in the loop, tell them, do me a favor. Are you taking notes at the meeting? If so, just send me the notes of the meeting, because then I will feel that you have kept me in the loop and I will be very happy. Now, there may be some situations, Stan, where there are two very important meetings and the people put them right back to back on your schedule. What I would do is in the morning of that meeting, particularly since you said that, you know, you're going to be late for the next meeting, is alert the person in that next meeting and let them know you will be 5 to 10 minutes late. So that this way, when you walk in, you don't feel like you're interrupting the meeting or that you've slighted that leader who has called the meeting. It would be like if I invited you to a party and you were going to show up late, you'd probably call me ahead of time and say, hey, Lou, appreciate the invite. I'll be there, but I'm going to be coming from dinner and I might be there a half hour late. And that is an acceptable, sociable way to be able to do that. The other thing too, Craig, when I heard, read this at the first thing, I thought, this is like being off from school for an entire summer, that when September comes, you got to learn how to be in school again. And I think, and I'm seeing this, a lot of my clients are learning how to be in meetings again and how to be back at work. And after 2 years, they're having to learn the hard way. So, but I do like the point that you made, Craig, is going ahead and the example you used of the person who said, I won't accept a meeting back to back. There's got to be a 15-minute pause in between it. This is something, Stan, you could start doing. Is instead of calling meetings on the hour, on the half hour, it's not like you're delivering a traffic report on the radio where people know, okay, I got to tune in at this point. Schedule your meetings for 1:10. Or 1:12, make it an odd number, because when you make it an odd number, like 1:12, people will say 1:12. What's going to happen at 1:12? And so that this way you're providing the opportunity to be able to do that. So don't schedule on the hour, on the half hour, so that this way, whether you know it or not, you're going to be giving some people some time to get from one meeting or another. And maybe it's not just getting from one meeting to another, it's being able to take a quick break, smoke them if you got them, grab your lunch, use the facilities, do something in between meetings so that when they do get to your meeting, their mind is fresh and their mind is not still in the last meeting that they ran from. So that's what I would definitely do, is you start scheduling your meetings, not on the hour and the half hour. And then when you start doing it, other people will see that that's what you do and it's working well for you. And if they're attending your meetings, they'll appreciate that and they'll start doing the same thing. So that's my answer.
Smoke them if you got them.
Yes, smoke them if you got them.
Because who doesn't want to have that person?
4 months, no smoking.
There you go. Nobody wants that hot boxer sitting next to them after they've been out smoking.
Yeah, that's tough. So got to carry Febreze around with you. Anyway, take us to the next
okay. This comes to us from Atlanta, Georgia, from Jan. Just got done listening to your excellent podcast with Kevin King on diversity, equity, and inclusion just last week. Thanks, Jan. I agree diversity does offer more opportunities for creativity and innovation. I don't see any signs from our management team that this is even on their radar. How can I, as a manager, begin to make my team more inclusive and diverse? Lou.
Craig, I'd like to call a friend. Can I use a lifeline and call a friend? Yeah, what's Kevin's number again? Do we have that? We'll give him a call. Jan, that's a great question. And I think in listening to the podcast where Kevin King talked about the state of diversity, equity, and inclusion of the last year, that I believe, Craig, you asked a question, if I'm not mistaken, that from a position you applied it to when you were in a position and you had people around you that looked and talked and acted just like you, and you wanted to diversify and how to do it. And I thought Kevin's answer was quite well, or quite good. The one thing that I would say here for you, Jan, is one, you need to be you need to be careful. Yeah, obviously yes, you want diversity, you want inclusion, but I would be careful in how you're doing it, only because if you start advertising that this next position is I'm looking for a woman, it could come across pretty bad, particularly in an environment of equal employment opportunity. You don't want to go down that road. You want the best person. But while you're going through, and I think one of the things that Kevin talked about was that unconscious bias. And if you're able to break through that unconscious bias, I would definitely look at everybody, and then again, not having a quota, because that's going to get you in trouble. In fact, that's what gets lots of people in trouble, is when they think that there's a quota system in place. But yes, Kevin did talk about a report that we talked about in the podcast, where those companies that have greater diversity, equity, and inclusion in their organizations see anywhere from a 15 to a 30% profit increase from their industry average. So it does definitely provide some advantages. So when you have openings on your team, I would definitely, again, you want the right person, but eliminate that unconscious bias, so that this way you are going to be able to increase your team so that it becomes more diverse. And just like Kevin talked about, diversity does not restrict itself to just race, ethnicity. There's all different things when it comes to diversity that you need to take into consideration. And that can go to disciplines as well. I mean, hiring an accountant to do a sales position would be a little bit of diversification in an organization.
Jan, Lou covered a lot of things, and I would say you watched one of our Kevin interviews. There's actually two out there, so I would go out under a channel. You can search for both under Kevin King. There's a lot of good advice in the first one as well. You know, my situation, the question I had for him last week was a little bit different, because I was trying to figure out how to grow those people from inside, and I had a very diverse workforce at the entry levels. I didn't have it at the management levels, and I was trying to find some ways to grow that. And Kevin had some great suggestions, especially in the first pass of the interviews, about doing some blind reviews of applications and doing some other things to make sure that everybody is being reviewed on their merits, which honestly, you should be doing that all the time anyway. And so make sure that you are getting a good pool of candidates for your job, work with your recruiter to try and ensure that's happening, and then work to get the best person in that job by first making sure you've got a big wide net of people that you can pull in, so you have diversity of choice for yourself, so you can make the best choice for your organization. But definitely go back and catch both episodes that we did with Kevin, because there's a lot of good information in that first one that we didn't touch on in the second interview, which it sounds like that's the one you watched. But thanks for viewing.
Yeah, and to just touch a little bit on what you said, to in casting that net, when you're looking for people for your position, make sure that you're very specific in what the criteria that you're going to use to make your decision, because that will become very important in choosing the best person for the job. So if you can take and look at it in the form of communication skills, verbal, written, spoken, experience on different topics. And if you can break it down almost like an RFP, where you're looking for specific boxes to be checked off, and you're looking not just to check off a box, but you're looking for quantitative information in there, such as you want 3 to 5 years experience in this, and someone has 6 years of experience in this. That's going to show you that they're probably the better candidate when it just comes to experience. Now, they may fail in everything else, but just because they're high in experience doesn't mean they get the job. And the reason why I'm telling you to do that, Jan, is you don't want to become an impulse buyer, where you see one thing that is attractive about the job, about an applicant for a job, and you hire the person based upon that one competency. That's where a lot of people get in trouble. So make sure you do a good job in outlining what are you looking for in this next candidate.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Well, that was a solid viewer mailbag, Lou.
Yeah, well, those were four. I thought deep dive. There were some that talked about, little things like, is Craig single and does he live alone? And I didn't think those were good mailbag issues, particularly since you're engaged. And I've seen Susan in action, and she'll put someone down.
Well, not violently, but yeah. So yeah, no, I appreciate all those questions and concerns as well. So Lou, going through that viewer mail, what is your big takeaway today?
My big takeaway is still a lot of questions about what we're doing now, that offices are opening up and virtual. I see that's not only in our viewer mail, but I see that with my clients as well, where they're trying to get their footing on this new work environment and culture. And how is it going to work? How are we going to maintain productivity? When do we pull people together? Do we have the right metrics to judge productivity? How can we refine things? So yeah, I think my big key takeaway is we're still getting our footing, trying to get back into a post-COVID world.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is, and this is interesting because I find this in my coaching practice as well, is there's a lot of questions behind the question, like that. Oh, I've got an onboarding problem. No, you actually have a resignation problem. Our first question around, in-person collaboration, there's a real good question behind there we didn't touch on of, is there really a problem with your collaboration remote? There's some questions to ask behind these questions to really understand why we're struggling with some things.
I think there are some assumptions that people are making that are leading them to the question that's not answering the real problem. Right.
Correct. Self-awareness and really kind of digging for the question behind the question, I think, is a huge opportunity for growth for a lot of folks. And I think that would help here as well. Sorry for the tough love again, Thad. See this kind of, I can do the tough love and then I feel terrible afterward. And so really sorry, Thad. Thad'll never watch us again. So everyone else, find two people to help us replace that. So that's it. So thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Q&A on Breakthrough Leadership. You can follow us on all your favorite social media platforms, as long as your favorite social media platforms are Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can also find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms as well. And we always post our new episodes on Thursday. So until next time, I'm Craig Anderson.
And be the best leader you can be. I'm Lou Quinto.